Hello and welcome to Australia. Richard Miller, Never Not Here. We're on this mega tour, and it's a tour. It's not even that much of space. I mean, we've found ourselves in a certain area, not too far from Byron Bay, and there's so much to discover. But actually, there's so much right here to discover. And you've seen some of the things on the website, and plenty more are coming. So just to see who we're talking to today, we're with Kira Kay. So Kira, thanks so much for coming over and saying hi.
Very welcome. And hello to whoever is watching this.
Yes. Come to find out that you're a woman of many continents, and that you know Australia as well as Europe, as well as, I don't know, have you been to North America too?
I have visited to North America, not spent a lot of time, but I have visited a few times, in Canada.
So something about humanity is probably very much the same, and maybe some differences are evident too. And,
well, I think the basic part of humanity to me is the same. You know, everyone who's watching this is the same inside. We have different cultural behaviours, different patterns, different ways of interacting in the world, which is often co-created by our environment, our society. But who we are inside, every single one of us is the same.
So we have a different focus, and that's kind of like our habit patterns.
I wouldn't necessarily say focus. Sometimes it's what I call the automatic behaviour, our interface, you know, the part of what we think we are. And if we do the inquiry and find out who we really are, we see ourselves and we see the other person, then we discover we're all the same.
That's not really the motivation, though. We're trying to find out who we are, and then, or what's fundamental to life, and then our discovery is that we may be similar to other people, and then in the end we might discover we're all the same. But really, what we're trying to do is figure out what's our root, or you know how does it work that certain things keep popping up in our lives and other things slip away. And there's so many theories about it that we're trying to track them all down and find out which ones might be authentic. And so.
Well, I've travelled many different cultures, and because of my own personal interest, have followed very much and investigated the stories and ethnic stories of different cultures. And there seems to be a similar, I guess, basis in many, which is we're all trying to find our way home. And yes, for everyone who's watching this, for you, for the other people that you've met in your time here, everyone has a different way of inquiring. Yours, for example, is doing these interviews, having the travels that you're doing. But each one of us has a different adventure in life, a different exploration, a different reason. So the reasons that started me on my path are different than yours, and probably different for everyone who's viewing this. And the different things that happen on each of our paths is also going to be different. Even somebody watching this and you sitting here talking to me are going to hear different things because of what your experiences are, what this person's experiences are, what my experiences are. You know, our interface, our interpreter of that is different. Underneath, who we really are, in my experience, is the same. How we express that often comes through our interface. If we're hiding behind our persona or we're identified with our persona, that can create a limit to what can be possible in our lives and a limit to what we see in the other person. So often we're not really seeing the person as they really are. We're seeing their behaviour, we're reacting to their behaviour, instead of just actually seeing how beautiful they are. And connecting from heart to heart. Because to me that's what really matters, when we meet each other heart to heart. Be seen and to see. And there's, in my experience, there's a lot of healing in that. And when we stop at the interface of the behaviour, it's when we might judge, that's not good, I don't like that, or I like that. It limits the whole view, it makes it more narrow in terms of what we're seeing, both of the other person, the world around us, and really in terms of what is possible for ourselves, for humanity.
Does the behavior get in the way, or is it just our belief that that guy is his behavior that takes us off our center when we see some radical behavior, or maybe some old behavior that seems to go recycling many, many times?
Well, it depends on which view you're talking about. So, for example, if you're interacting with someone who has, as you say, a strong behavior, then your reaction to that is your part. So your reaction to their behavior is then your limitation. It's irrelevant about the other person then. Now, if you can really be with someone and see their behavior and accept that, and you're really seeing them, then that's different. And it gives the other person a feeling of being seen. And my experience about that over and over is when someone feels really seen, when they feel accepted for who they are, including their behaviour, often there's a little gap, a window where they can see themselves more clearly and they show themselves more clearly without the behaviour. And to me that's really precious. And that's the possibility, and that for me is the part that inspires me in my own work and meeting with people in whatever situation, is how much can we come together in all sorts of ways? Because there's a different creativity, there's a different possibility of aliveness that happens in that.
I can relate to what you're saying, because when I speak with people that can really receive me, and sometimes I know I'm acting out, and sometimes I know I'm really blasting, not necessarily against that person, but just, putting out my old opinionated persona, and even though if those opinions will change every hour even, but still I have that weight to it, and like flinging things out on the world, and many people will coach and say you can give that up, or you can, coaching is made up of many things. And a lot of times there are suggestions that this is not so important, or that could be another avenue, or so on and so on. But it seems to me that it's not that I reject that coaching, but just being plain received somehow is real obvious and very different and more potent to me.
Well, what can happen is if we're told to change something, if someone says that's not good, we often contract, and when we start judging ourselves on that part. So we end up with the judgment from the outside, the judgment from the inside. So if someone is accepting us, they can see our behaviour and they can also see our potential. And it's a door, there's an opening that can happen then. And there can often be for the person a relaxing about their own judgment. And there can be a kindness to oneself, or what's often talked about in terms of self-love, which is where you see your behaviour and you go, oh, I'm doing that again, and that's okay, and I'm here again. Because once you really see your behaviour in the moment, then you've just had a gap. In that moment that you've seen your behaviour and you've accepted it, there's a window, there's a choice then in that moment with yourself. And I think that's what you've started to do, because I think it's only been really a week or a week and a half since we first met here in Byron, but with the area of Byron Bay. And to me, it's like you've softened. You actually are more joyful. You're more relaxed, and you are being more gentle with yourself, in my observation.
I feel it. I do feel that,
Yeah.
And I don't know. And I'm not even authoring it, it just is happening. And I'm having a lot of contacts. And I'm very introspective in more ways than just intellectually. Somehow I'm introspective in feeling my feelings shift. And
And I think you're letting your heart be touched, Richard. And I think you're letting yourself be seen. And like you were saying, that when you feel seen, something in you relaxes. And that's what's starting to happen. And so you're able more to relax with yourself. And when we relax with ourselves, our whole system starts to relax. When our whole system relaxes, we start to see more. Sometimes that can be a bit uncomfortable because we start to see even more about our patterns. And sometimes it's not very nice when you start to see how automatic and sometimes how unpleasant you might be out in the world. And the more you see it and the more you relax, the more you also start to see the nice things about yourself as well. Because often we don't see that. We're so busy judging ourselves or perceiving that we're being judged by others that we miss all of the qualities that are actually very healthy, that are very beautiful about ourselves, that need the nourishment, that need the investment to grow, to blossom, and to come out of us. The part in us that does want to meet heart to heart.
Right, in a way you feel, let's say I feel received. And then that actually engenders a more clear seeing. Maybe I was seen before, but it's somehow more clear. And it doesn't necessarily just switch gears there, but now I'm going to act it out and watch a little bit more than I was. And then I can say, whoa, I don't really need all this, maybe it'll just kind of dissolve or disappear on its own, and it won't really be something to evict or to get fierce with, or it'll just fall away by itself.
Well, there used to be these little, I forget what they were called, these little puppets games when I was a kid, where there would be different hand puppets and talking to one another. And that's how we are a lot of the time. We're talking at one another and over one another and jumping on one another. And then we're not meeting as the human beings. Because every one of us wants to be seen, wants to be accepted, wants to feel loved. I mean, that's a very natural human part of us. And as we do that, with ourselves, as we do that with each other, then we do drop into another possibility. When we're just going from the defensive behaviour to defensive behaviour, and that can show out in many different ways. Some defensive behaviour can be hiding, some can be attacking, and a whole myriad of different things in between. And it's sort of more like that's, it is entertainment on the one hand, but it can also be quite destructive for oneself, for others, for relationships, and certainly what's happening on the planet.
Well, destructive, but also distracting. And I guess these puppets are just like fixed ideas of ourselves, right? What you're saying. And so because of their puppets, they're just fixed ideas and they're going through this fixed routine.
Well, often they are what we have developed from our childhood, our environment. Sometimes it might be from trauma. Sometimes it might be things that we've learned. Sometimes it might even be new things that we've learned, where we've even tried to be a better person, but we've just put another layer on top. And then we put another layer on top. And then we don't really know, well, is that true? Is that really who I am? And so without the inquiry, without really looking, did I really mean to say that? I just saw the other person react then. What did I say? They seemed to be upset. Did I attack them? Did I hit them on the head with what I said? Did I really want to do that? What do I want here with this person? So if we're looking in each moment more honestly with ourselves, then it's much easier.
Is there such a thing as their stuff and my stuff, or is it all the same? Because in other words, you're saying, did I attack that person? And then I could say, well, no, I didn't, but they're just perceiving that I did.
Yes, but they might have perceived that you did.
Yeah.
And indeed, that might be true. And if you're feeling in your heart and you're feeling really open and you feel a neutral feeling, then maybe there is no stuff. But if you're feeling a contraction, if you're feeling righteous, if you're feeling better than, then it's probably part of your stuff in there as well.
We were talking about received and being received, receiving and being received. And those that are receiving, and well, you and others around here are receiving people. But those that are receiving, they still have some, I mean, it seems like every perception causes some kind of a felt sense, right? And so then we could say it's a reaction in a way, although maybe it's not the belief in that reaction or the belief in those thoughts. But I mean, everything we see, especially pain, injustice, or inanity, somehow ricochets in our body somehow, and also with anyone else, right? Everyone.
Well, the way I look at it, Richard, is if I have a neutral feeling about it, I might have a body sensation, I might have a recognition that something's being said, but if I'm not contracted about it, then that's what I consider is a more neutral response. And that's a response rather than a reaction. And so a reaction is when, for example, you say something that I don't like and I get some upset with it, then I have a reaction. That's then my persona jumping into. That's my puppet jumping up. But if I don't have that, if there's not a defensive or some other behavior come up and I'm just here, then yes, I'm going to have body sensations. I might indeed have emotional sensations. I might feel a lot in my heart. I might feel a lot of compassion or empathy. So if somebody is in a lot of pain and I'm really receiving them, I have the empathy and I can feel their pain. And I feel with them. I'm not taking that on, but I'm having a resonance with that and I'm caring in that sense. And that's what I call more of a response, not a reaction.
Is there a special skill or knack in not taking that on? Because I mean, even when people do body work or when they do energy work, sometimes they take a shower or they wash their hands or somehow they have a skill or a knack at not taking something on, right? I don't know if that's all hocus pocus or if people just do that.
I mean, certainly if you feel more comfortable with washing your hands or having a shower as a technique, sure. My personal opinion is there's no need because there's not anything to take on.
So those things are just a symbol. In other words, you're symbolizing not taking anything on.
That's my perspective with it, yes, and my experience with it. And there can be a way in terms of when you're beginning to do sessions and you're learning about how to distinguish between what is this person's and what is mine, then it can be quite effective sometimes to have some symbology or some method where you get some distance. So, okay, I've given this person a session and now I come back to me and I need to look at what now is mine because maybe something got touched or triggered in me in giving you a session. And so my homework then is to go home and look at what is that? What does that mean for me? What's been touched here? What do I need to look at for my evolvement so that I can keep giving better sessions?
So then with personally, and with our bodies, but also we talk about energy, and I'm not saying I'm not making any definition or statement about it. But I mean, we talk about energy and we talk about energy held in a room or a building or on a part of a land. And maybe after sessions, somebody would go in with some kind of sage and light smoke up and smudge places. They're used to do that. Yogis and gurus use incense and smudging, and even the Christian church, has their incense pot. So then it's as if there was some kind of energy hanging around, and then they're just saying not take on something. Probably that's all symbology for all of that, right?
I mean, it could be, and I think a lot of those have also become rituals, so they're not even really authentic, tuning into what the situation or space or place might indeed be. I mean, I think my opinion is each time, each situation, each place, we need to look fresh. What's here? What am I feeling? What's my experience?
So kind of in a way, we just check in with everything we have, all our equipment, our mind, our body, our feelings, and then just feel if we have any homework to do, and if it's just a clean space, we can just even maybe just that cleanliness or that centeredness is a point that we can reach no matter what.
Well, I think there is what I call like a place of neutral that we have within us, but in the whole world, everywhere, has got something with it. And that's going to be different in different places, and we will feel and experience different things. That's a part of the adventure of life. Why would I want to clear that out? I'm here to have the adventure of my experience, to be a human being, to have different experiences. I'm not here to be a blank slate. The more home that I feel in myself, the more complete that I'm feeling, it has more, I guess you might say, the equipment then is more fine-tuned to have the different experiences. So then when I come to a piece of land like where we are here in this physical location on planet Earth, it's beautiful. It's just got this alive stillness. And if you're living more in your body, in your senses, in your emotions, then you experience that. But if you're on overload and you're in deep stress, you might not get that sense.
Is a blank slate just like a tool or a button where you can reset your computer so you can reboot, and then you can just touch the blank slate and say, oh yeah, everything, and not carry some of the old hang-ups from the old programs?
Well, I consider that something that, in terms of responsibility, I have the choice every moment to restart. We start again now, and we start again now. And, the point is, if I'm here, then I can start again. But if my puppet is here, then I'm not starting again now. I'm running all the old automatic experiences or the attitudes or the beliefs that I've run instead of meeting authentically here. Who am I? Who are you? What's possible here between us?
So what about, okay, there could be a complete restart, and then there could just be a puppet restart, like you go back to your basic conditioning maybe, and let go of some problem you're having with somebody or an argument you let go of, but you've still got your own personality traits. But then we want to have the knack of how to actually do a complete restart if we want to.
Well, I think that's going to be different for every single person, because there'll be different things in your life that give you that opportunity. Sometimes it might be a crisis situation, and often is for people, that stimulates them to realize, I don't want to live the same way anymore. And often when people get a diagnosis of a serious illness, and I've had 2 people in this last few days who've contacted me on that, and one of them has completely changed his life. Within 7 days, he's completely changed his life. So sometimes if you have a crisis, it's big enough, but I suggest don't wait for the crisis. But the point is, you need to want to have that restart deeply enough, because to undo, or not so much undo, but not use the puppet, that takes both practice and perseverance and a dedication. It's possible, but you need to want it.
Sometimes outer changes seem to let us release us. Sometimes, okay, and a disease and an illness could be one outer change. And so many times we talk about outer changes because we say, well, when I meet the right girl, when I have a family, when the kids grow up, you're always postponing, right? And when I retire from my job, well, of course I am retired and I'm not working, so then, and I'm cut loose here and I'm traveling in a new continent and all these things, I'm doing all the right things, like to say that I'm free moment to moment, But I mean, does it depend on all that? Somehow I've gone through all the steps, but
I mean, you don't need to have a crisis situation, definitely not. But I think that the key point is you need to want to find out who you are beyond your puppet. I mean, that's, if you're comfortable and you're happy with your behavior and how your life is, then there's not much incentive to change. You probably, if someone's like that, they're not watching this interview. But those of you who are watching are probably in some way not feeling the happiness that you think that you would like to be feeling, or the freedom you would like to be feeling. So here you are watching Never Not Here and having a look at what else can be possible. And that then is pointing to, are you going to just keep looking every moment? And I mean, this is what the sages say, and I know that you've interviewed a lot of people, and I'm sure that you've heard the same comment over again. Be here now, be here now. And on one level, there isn't another option. But I would add a few more things to that just from my own experience is, I used to take the be here now as a pressure and try to do it from a trying perspective. Okay, I'm going to be here now and I'm going to really be present. And of course, then I would get caught up in trying hard, in attention, and that doesn't work. And probably the most effective key is to start to really understand more deeply the thoughts, the attitudes, the beliefs, well, for me, that I had, that, and to check, are they true? And I don't know if you've, interviewed Byron Katie, for example, but she does some wonderful work on the 4 basic questions on, looking at the basic beliefs and attitudes. And, you've recently met with Paul Lowe, who's been a wonderful mentor and guide in my life, who's, input on in terms of looking at your basic conditioning, your behaviour, and becoming aware of it. Not to change it, not to modify it, but to see it. And my experience is when you really, really see it and give permission for it, and it's not even acceptance, it's a place that actually is beyond acceptance, then it changes on its own. You don't do change. Something happens and you actually experience yourself beyond that core place that you thought was you.
Could acceptance just mean not rejecting? So then acceptance would be very neutral, like it doesn't have any push on it, but
That's one step. My experience is that there's another depth, which is, it is neutral. I don't quite know how to describe it really, but it's an experience where there's a peace and a stillness. And it doesn't matter that I have that behaviour. And suddenly something else internally feels different. And the relationship then to that behaviour, that belief, then is fundamentally different. It's changed. But I didn't do the change. I didn't try to change it.
Just to go back a little bit, because I was really relieved when you talked about, so many people say you need to desire this, and many people say you have to desire it as the most important thing in your life, your highest priority. And then I start to think, well, that's true because whatever you're interested in just keeps showing up in your vision, in your field of sight. And so then just to have it there and have that noticing be there. And then I was thinking, like, how confused I was, for my memory of how confused I was for so long, thinking that really making it your first priority and wanting and desiring, and that kind of desire, first, hard desire would mean with anxiety, and laced with anxiety, right? And then you said, well, that didn't work, something that, and that, it's nice to be really clear on that. Somehow it's not that we're trying to put anxiety and neediness on the desire, but as I understand what you say, the desire is just there so that those things are present. That option is on the table, sort of like the option that, hey, I could look at myself, or I could just relax into see what operates this mechanism I'm running here, or somehow ease it.
I resonate with some of what you're saying. The last part I would say a little bit differently for myself, my experience, which is I have needed to really want to have freedom to, I think for me, it was more the level of stress and anxiety that I felt deeply inside all the time. And I knew this couldn't be the way that we're meant to be living. That this is not meant to be normal. What I discovered is there's a lot of people who have the same thing. And for me, I tried many different methods. I tried many different workshops and all the different spiritual readings. So there was a deep desire in wanting to try to change. I wanted to get away from this unpleasant feeling, from what at times felt something that felt very black, very dark, and very painful. And, then the behaviours that I started to see in myself, I didn't like them either. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like how I would cover up my insecurity with being more arrogant. I didn't like I have to be right all the time, that therefore people will love me. I'd see the behaviours and it would feel really unpleasant. I didn't like it. And I want to change it. And like you said earlier, there's all sorts of coaching mechanisms. So I'd try another layer and another layer, but that didn't work either. And then for me, it has been to, we said earlier, to sit in, to experience myself, simply to see, okay, I'm doing that behavior again. It's okay. It's okay. That is how I am for all the reasons that have happened in my life. And is there another possibility? Is it true, the belief that I'm holding in this moment? Is it true? Is it really true? A little gap. And then something else can start to happen. It's been my experience, and then different freedom. And a lot of the beliefs that I've held, both the surface ones and the ones that I've uncovered on a more unconscious level, have started to sort of drop away on their own, really. And it's not through a doing, it's not through, okay, I'm going to fix this one, but more through what I call being kind to myself, a softness, a gentleness. And internally, there's still always been this part that has kept me looking. So when I say being kind or being gentle, it doesn't mean like, oh yeah, no, I'm okay how I am. It's more like, I didn't like that. It's okay. And, for me, one of the techniques that's worked for me is to be my own best friend. How would I be with my best friend if she or he was feeling so disturbed? I'd probably be really kind to them. I'd probably be really caring towards them. I'd probably be non-judgmental and say, hey, take it easy, take a breath.
Maybe that's the part that the male energy is missing, and I would call that the feminine caring. But in myself and in others that I see speaking, it seems once they discover that, they say, who am I? And then they find nobody's here, or they find this vast space. Well, then there's no heart here, or nobody to love, or nobody to cherish, and then you think, and then the heart turns on, and it's just all focused out on everybody else, like all these other apparent entities feel very close, but somehow there's no little baby here that I'm cherishing, and that I identify this as my little energy, my little nugget, and took a long time to really say that, hey, needs to be included, or maybe that's just fundamental to include.
Well, while we're here in human bodies, we are separate. We've had different experiences. And until I've actually got to know all of who I am, how can I really be here with you? I can be with you to a certain degree, but if I'm not here with me, I'm still then going to judge the parts in you that I don't accept in myself.
Or maybe those parts that don't even show up, let's say I'm found the vastness and I'm just in the blank, and then I look at you and I see a blank over there too, and then I see that my pain is all manufactured, and then I might start seeing, hey, your pain is all manufactured too, and then that doesn't seem too kind sometimes, because people are reacting to their own pain with belief, and well, who knows? How can I possibly predict the circumstances of another?
You can't. I mean, my experience is if I can be with another, for example, you here now, and I can see you as you are, but I can't know everything that's gone on with you. I can't affect exactly how you're going to react to me, but I can be myself. And there will be reactions, there will be responses from your side. So if I was to be angry with you right now and say something really nasty, well, then I would get probably a reaction. I'm not going to do that. But I'm just using that as an example. You know, we can choose from ourselves how we want to be out in the world. And it is a choice. On another level, it gets to a point where it's not really a choice. Because you just care for everyone all the time.
You know, a good word maybe to mention at this point is expectation, because like it's kind of rare to meet a person and not have any expectation from them, or they not have any expectation from you, because at least we're expecting that we'll listen to each other, or we'll get something, or when we go to a teacher, let's say, or somebody's meeting or something like that, we're expecting that we're going to absorb and they're going to deliver. And so then, in a way, expectations are where we realize we feel a separation, because there's some kind of a barrier there, saying like about the expectation is like an affront to an imagined boundary. And I don't know, I'm just throwing in a lot of words now, maybe I'm overdoing it, you know, like, okay, I mean, somehow there is a feeling like people are too close, and so then that must be a boundary, right? And
well,
then,
I'm going to stop.
Yeah, okay, let's go back.
We've got several different points there.
Yeah, go for
I'm going to
it.
start with the first one, which is expectations. So I can't do anything about your expectations because they're yours.
You can accept them, maybe.
Well, I don't have to. Maybe I don't want to accept your expectations. But what I can do is I can take care of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have an expectation on how I would like this interview to go, well, I can state my expectations. That would be helpful. If I don't have any expectations, I can just be here for the adventure of it, which is actually what I've done here today.
Yeah.
But sometimes I might be in a situation where I have an expectation.
Well, you could just start talking about the things you want to talk about too, or ask me a question. Anything can happen.
Of course I could, but what I'm just pointing to is that expectation. My expectations are my responsibility, and your expectations is yours. I can't do anything about yours. I can attempt to get to understand that more deeply. That might bring us closer together. It might help us to understand each other more. But
I didn't really mean accept them. I just meant receive them, I guess, knowing that they really don't affect you. You know, I just didn't mean accept them for face value and say, okay. I just meant, because earlier in the conversation we were talking about receiving.
I mean, I can receive your expectations, yes. But maybe someone out there, maybe they don't want to. And then what do you do with that? If you have an expectation that you're going to be received, it's an expectation. Yeah. You know, it's another, and you know, it's true for many of us. We have so many expectations, conscious and unconscious. And again, by having the inquiry, it shows us then a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our attitudes, because expectations are a consequence of our beliefs, our attitudes, you know, of what we think the world is, what we think we are, what we think the other is, what we think the situation is.
Many times it's, you know, instead of expecting that we'll be received, we're always expecting that we won't be received, right?
That's more common, yes.
That's more common. That's kind of like being inadequate, right? And somehow unlovable.
It's not that we're being inadequate. We have a belief that we're not adequate. We have a belief that we're not lovable. It's not true. It's really not true.
Of course, we can act out so that it's pretty hard for anyone to show it. You
Well,
know?
that's true, yes. We act out badly enough that, you know, we co-create then. And that's what happens is often people who have a belief that they're not lovable, the belief that they're not going to be accepted, or that no one's going to like them, or that people are going to exclude them, they, as you say, they act out a behaviour that then co-creates a situation where that manifests often that outcome. So it reinforces the belief. So the circle goes around again, and then it gives them a reason. They see, no one likes me. I told you no one likes me. But if they can break their pattern in the middle, they do something different. If something goes crack, and they let themselves be seen, it actually can change their life. And in a way, a new possibility then, a new experience overlays all those years of a certain belief.
What did you mean by let themselves be seen? Just by the other, or by by everybody,
by themselves, right? And by the other. You know, and often particularly when we're acting out a behaviour, it's because we're doing it to either not be seen or to be seen in a certain way. And as you say, sometimes we act out a very unpleasant behaviour, you know, to prove that we're not really lovable, because inside we really feel that. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. I know that. I've been in that. I know it from direct experience. And if we can have that relationship with ourselves, and to see it first for ourselves, to see, I'm acting out here, this may have a consequence. Do I want to keep doing this right now? Or do I want to experiment with something else and I don't know what might happen? And then something else can be possible. And my experience is something else really is possible. And the other thing is, which is quite true, is we're being seen much more than we realise all the time. No matter what we think, how much we're being seen, we're all reading each other on another level, at a much deeper level.
Yeah, it really doesn't take a medium or a psychic or everybody really is obvious. You just reflect and feel it.
And if we're willing to just be here, be more present. And when I say be more present, it's not a doing, it's more of a not doing. It's to take a breath and just hear the person, hear what they said, to hear your own voice, what you're saying. Notice what's going on in your body. Is your heart beating fast? Are you nervous here? Are you relaxed? Is the mind getting more busy? Are you preparing what to say next? If you notice it more, then there's more space. Everything slows down and, in a way, time expands. And then it's more relaxing. And you're more able to be in touch for yourself, what's going on, but also more able to see it in the other person. And then it's more fun.
I don't want to speak like it's complex, in a way, but we were talking about acting out in one way, saying kind of like being aggressive or being pushy, right? And so where people would not receive that too much. But then I suppose there's just the opposite of just trying to like suck up to somebody and just be over-serving or the endless mother or something like that. So then I'm not trying to say, is it a razor's edge? Or what authenticity is somewhere in between those two. And then is that something that's always going in and out? We're always going in and out of authenticity and always testing the ground of it? Or is it somehow get to be natural and easy?
Well, it can get to be natural and easy, but it needs practice. So what I call it sort of two-way attention. So I need to keep attention back to what's happening in me and attention to the outside, the other person or the environment or the situation. If I'm putting all the attention out on the other person, whether it's acting out or, as you say, sucking up, then I'm not here with me. I'm not noticing what's really going on here. So for me to be authentic, I need to be connected with me. But if I'm too focused here, then I can just be lost in my neurosis, because then I'm not in touch with the outside. I'm not in an interaction with my surroundings, my environment, the person, the circumstance. And then it takes practice. It's like, oh, I noticed I just contracted then. And I said something really sharp. And then I could see their reaction. Oh, I just apologized for saying that. And I took back responsibility. And they opened back up to me again. Oh, I feel more relaxed now. I can feel that I can say more to this person. So it's an ongoing process and practice. And practice. And more practice. It's been my experience.
A couple of days ago, somebody said an interesting word, because we talked about glamour. And he said glamour was seeing yourself through other people's how you imagine other people's eyes. And so then that's the look of it. But also then there's the feeling of it, which would be what we were talking about, seeing ourselves projecting too much out onto the other. And somehow the authentic part would be more centered and not wondering what's going on, how we're being received.
Well, I don't always connect with all the words you use, so I don't always follow everything that you say. So I'll just pick out a couple of words that connect for me. So one is I'll transpose the word image than glamour because that resonates more for me. So we often will project an image on how we want to be seen or how we like to be seen. And we've got to find out, well, who are we really? Because it might actually be close to the image we're trying to project. So we might be trying to be a nice person, and underneath actually we're an authentically nice person. But we're not letting that part shine through. We're trying to be a nice person. And that's a very common behaviour I see in a lot of people. And especially people who are probably watching this and out looking in their lives, they're sincerely trying to be a nice person, but underneath they're already such a giving and caring person. So how do you find that? Well, first off, to become more aware of, am I trying to portray an image here? What am I saying? Is that true? Is that really what I want to say here right now? If I find myself trying to be more upright or more present, oh, what am I doing that for? Who am I doing that for? Is that for me? Is that for the other person? And then just to keep looking, well, what feels more comfortable? And then notice what judgments might come up. And the judgments might come up, oh, but I'm being lazy now. I'm not doing it right. And it's like, well, is that true? What's really happening? So it is, in a way, it's a constant reflection and contemplation. And that's where the self-awareness builds. And it can be sometimes a bit confusing because it can, when you see things that you don't know, and then you just feel like, oh my God, is this just all mindfuck? But once you start to get the knack, it gets more easy. So sometimes listening to the different talks, joining the different workshops that different people that you're interviewing offer, reading different books, having different experiences, all of that can contribute to finding the tools and the roads inward for that contemplation that help one see oneself. And that can be different for every single one of you. The old saying is many roads lead to Rome, and it's true. Different ways, more contemplation might be, and meditation might be helpful for some people. For other people, it might be more active inquiry. For some people, it might be just being out in life and watching an occasional talk or reading an occasional book. And I think the key element is, from my experience and the people that I've met who've gained a heightened level of self-awareness, is that it needs to be some desire or wish for more freedom or clarity or happiness. That seems to be a common theme.
Earlier we had mentioned empathy, and we were saying, and I guess we were just saying that actually if we don't erect barriers, if we somehow just let ourselves fall open, there's always empathy with every situation because we're human, interactive, reflecting creatures, or however you want to put it. And so then when we go into the room, we can feel some kind of an energy. We can feel a wound up energy, and one that's very, very tightly focused and trying to pick apart some concepts or something like that. And we can feel another energy that doesn't have any agendas and purposes and just feels like it's flowing and softer. And then we can meet actually with the purpose of tasting this softness. And somehow I guess we have a preference for that. We want to say, well, the purpose of our meeting is to be in a high, well, let's call it high space, I mean...
Well, I would caution you, and also the viewers, not to put too much of an ideal on the peak experience. Life is full of peaks and valleys and everything in between. So if, my experience of being in empathy with different people or different situations means a very wide spectrum of experience. Because empathy is simply having a resonance with what's happening either in the room or with the other person. And that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean someone in terror. That can be someone in extreme bliss. That can be someone, in a combination of, ecstasy and pain, for example, a woman giving birth. It can be someone in complete bewilderment who's just come out of a disaster. It can be someone who's just had a deep opening and a pop to a new level of awareness, and they're just feeling so good and so much peace. So empathy is simply a name for the resonance that we feel when we allow ourselves to be in connection with a person, with a situation, or a wider environment. So that's one part. What are we all achieving for? Well, I think the first part is often if we're feeling pain, we want to not feel pain. So in terms of, if I look for myself, my constant level of anxiety, fear, and a disquiet, I didn't want to feel that. So that was my drive. And I think that can be true for many people, that there can be a different, might be similar, but different flavors, so to speak, of what is attempting to push us to look for what else. I know for me, I thought that, once I reach a certain state, it's going to be a high state and a certain level of peace, and then everything will feel really good. And I've had some really amazing peak experiences. But what I discovered was that I still didn't feel that all the time. I didn't feel a peacefulness. I didn't feel in my humanity a completeness, a sense of that everything's okay as it is. And that for me has come from relaxing, being with the situation, with myself, with the other person, and in a sense allowing not only the empathy of whatever situation I find myself in, but the reflection of what that will bring for me. Excuse me. And the consequent compassion that comes from that. And when I say compassion, I don't mean for the other person necessarily, because first it's here. And then it's with what is happening outside. And that might elicit a response from me. It might actually be an active response. And I'm thinking of situations, because I'm in Nepal frequently, and often the situations there are not static. It's not like us sitting here talking together. So I might be in, one of the children environments that I'm involved with, and the compassion in that moment, the alive kind of response might be to pick up one of those children and really to connect and to run with them and to play and to be silly and to, wow, we're both here. So it might be very active. In another situation, it might be with someone who's really in a crisis. It might be, being with a mother and a daughter, and they're in a deep disturbance because they're not understanding one another, and feeling an empathy and feeling the differences in that situation of these two people, and being with them and allowing perhaps a different voice that can help that situation come to a different resolution. So empathy is not something that's, that's a static state. It's more a label, a name for something that's happening all the time. So when you said about boundaries, we can put up a boundary, but in fact we don't have them. And as I see it, our optimum potential is to not have boundaries, because then we're going to know what's an appropriate response. I'm going to know I need to pick that child up now, even though the mother is over there. This child is needing to be held. And maybe I carry it over to the mother. Or I'm in a situation, might be a more formal situation, it might be in the supermarket, and I just can feel on an empathetic level that the woman at the checkout is in stress. And I might say, hey, are you okay? Are you having a hard day? And just take those few extra moments to be with her. So it's empathy in action actually makes it in compassion. Empathy is the resonance that we're feeling what might be on the other side, in the other person, in the environment. When we allow the natural response from ourselves, then that's compassion in action. That's the other part of empathy. And that's the aliveness. That's how we can come together. That's how we can have be living in a different level of harmony that's not trying to do good or be good, but where we're really living from heart to heart, where we're responding because we feel something in the other person or the situation, and we're allowing ourselves to have the response and to act on it. And there's a natural different reality that happens than when we're just puppets. If we're just interacting from our puppet worlds, then there's neither empathy nor compassion.
I'm thinking maybe that a boundary is just a feeling that we haven't felt before, that's more intense than normal, and we don't have that believe that would, and so then something arises. Like, I'm just thinking of somebody on the street that might ask you for money, and it feels like, oh, they ask me a lot. Mm-hmm. I've felt that already, and I would either look for, I know I don't have any small bills, so I'll have to say I can't do it.
Stop. Let's use that example. That's a really good example.
Let me just say one more part about it, and then you can say it for both of them. Mm-hmm. Or if somebody came right up to my nose and said, "You need to give me money now," then that would be a boundary I've never experienced that before. I might say, "Well, you're in trouble, aren't you, to come up and ask me like that?" And I could be compassionate, but also that would be something in me would feel different, right? Because it never happened before.
Okay, so let's break that down, both those examples. So being compassionate doesn't mean that you always give money. Sometimes it might be more compassionate to not give money. But the most important thing is, are you there when the person connects with you? So if you're walking past your regular subway and there's the standard beggars that are there on a regular level, do you meet them? Or if someone comes, as you said, right in your face, are you there? And then what do you feel? Are you having, in that moment, what is the empathic response? What are you actually feeling? And out of that, what arises as a response? And you don't know, that will be different every single time. Every single time you meet, what's true in that moment.
That would be a very, like a cultural conditioner, at least for a man, or like where I grew up or whatever. If someone got that close and said, "Hey, give me some money," you would say, push him away or hit him, because that's very culturally, the boys would do that. They wouldn't allow that. That's going beyond, and that's our definition of a boundary. But, it would be interesting just to stay there and feel it.
Well, your puppet, your automatic would hit, as you say. But to experiment, as you say, it's not. Well, on one level, we have a boundary in the sense that we have a physical body. And if you get a sense of it, you'll feel a wider boundary, an energetic boundary, and you can notice when someone comes into it. Now, the more awareness that you have in that, you're going to be more, in a sense, aware of what is your natural response. So when you say the person comes strongly into your face like that, if you are present, you'll feel that before the person's even walked in the room. You'll already sense that. It's not to do anything, but your sensory awareness magnifies in a way that we have no comprehension of when we're not in touch with it.
You might even move to diffuse it in a way, just engage the person right away before it gets his energy builds up.
It's not a doing.
Yeah.
It's a response. Because if you try and do it from, that person's aggressive, I need to do something here, it might make it worse. It's to more deeply listen inside and once you get the knack of this, once you start to invest in listening to what is true for you inside, it becomes more automatic. It becomes more automatic than your puppet, your conditioned way. But it takes practice to be in tune with that part, to be able to listen. Because it's often a quieter voice and a more neutral voice than our loud, noisy puppet. But once you start to get in touch with that, then yes, when the person's come into the room, you'll feel what is the response. It might be to go up to the person. It might be to leave the room. It might be to say something. It might be to invite someone else into the conversation. It will be different in the moment, in each situation. Nothing is ever the same, ever. So each situation is a different response. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. Every time you have the opportunity to start fresh, because every moment is fresh. Each now is a different now. So in that way, our conditioned boundaries, as you say, gives us an opportunity to look. Whether it be something that's more confronting because we've not experienced it before, or whether it's something that is a familiar boundary. I have a good one in Berlin where I'm living these days. If you walk on the if you walk on the bicycle path on your feet, then it's pretty certain within a few minutes you'll have someone really scream at you in anger that you're in the wrong place, which is fair enough. People are not meant to walk on the bicycle path. But it's a great way to see how is your response to being really yelled at. It's a fairly safe way because they're usually not dangerously angry.
Yeah, they might hit you because some of them like really want to go fast, right? And they're really, really.
Well, you do have to be
hammering it
aware.
down,
Yes, some of them, be aware. It's like standing in front of a motorcycle. But I'm just using that as an example that, yes, we have our conditioned boundaries. We have those that are visible and those that are less visible. So most of us, I would imagine, don't think that it's that comfortable to stand and be shouted and screamed at and feel okay with it until you've experienced it, especially when it's not personal. If I'm standing in the wrong place on the bicycle path, then on the one hand, I've got a consequence. Someone might be angry at me. But it's true for many situations in life. People might be angry. That has nothing to do with me. Or maybe I did overstep their boundary in a way that I didn't realize.
Too bad it wasn't always as clear as a bicycle path. If it was marked out so clearly, life would be pretty easy, right?
I think the bicycle paths still get a lot of confusion. But that's right. Life is messy, and it's a wonderful jungle of different experiences and people and situations. And so it gives us, whether we go to a workshop or we listen to a talk like this, life itself is full of the opportunities, the teachers in every moment for what we need. And sometimes, meeting a teacher or listening to a talk, reading a book can give us the support to recognize, oh yeah, that's what happened last week in that situation. Now I see it more clearly. So they can be a help along the way. But essentially the bottom line is we've got to look for ourselves. That's the only place and the only responsibility, because we have a response ability. We have the ability to respond, and that's us. You can't give me responsibility. It's mine. I can try and give it away to you. I can say, oh, please tell me what to do, help me make this decision. But ultimately, it still comes back to me. Even if you give me an answer, I can say, oh, Richard gave me a terrible answer.
Right. Or you can try to be stupid, you know. You can try to be dumb, like, I don't know where the compost is, and so don't give me the responsibility to take it out, right?
That's right, exactly.
You can be tricky, right?
We can be tricky, we can be manipulative, we can do all sorts of things, but bottom line is, the responsibility rests back with us.
You know, you shared that you had some wonderful experiences, and then you noticed that they don't stay around, they come and go, right? And maybe we've all noticed that experiences come and go, and there are higher ones and funner ones, and there are kind of like more tense ones and more urgent ones. And so then we get on this, we even started to talk about it, that we had a desire to find out how it all works, or some kind of, there's a desire to know who we are, what is it that's operating this, or how does it work? And we also said something like, we want to avoid pain, you know, but maybe what we want to do is find out if pain is real, you know, because that pain that's not real, we sure want to avoid, you know, like the suffering part, and it just comes from my focus, you know, and the part that's real, maybe we want to stay with it and care for it because it's got a use, you know. I mean, there's something going on there, and we should look into it. And so then we were also talking about the energy in a room, and how sometimes we say it's high energy, and sometimes, hey, you brought that energy down because you're just thinking too many thoughts or whatever. And we're kind of like on this up and down, trying to push ourselves toward the up and get away from the down, right? Avoid the pain. And then sometimes in spirituality they say, hey, there's a fulcrum, you know, and then we call it the witness, you know, and you can just sit there and watch the thing. But, you know, the relaxation that I'm getting from you and the way you're defining your life is like, it's a broader definition that you're saying it includes the ups, it includes the downs, it includes the witness. And then if it's wide like that, you can be relaxed no matter where you are on that whole system. And I like to kind of say that to everybody and make it clear that, hey, it's all included in life. And if you have too many preferences of only one corner of life, you're bound to be stressed out about it.
Very true. And you know what you said in terms of the inclusion, to me that's probably the most important point. Because if I want to just have a peak experience, or I'm focused on pain, or even if I'm focused on the witness, you know, I can have an experience of being the witness, which can sometimes then be more removed. Instead of including my humanity and the other person's humanity, we are human beings. This is a world in which we're living. And there's another potential that's even beyond what we normally experience in terms of our emotions, our body, our mind. There's another depth of what we can experience as we relax into that expansion. So if you're having a narrow view, as you say, for use your example of the fulcrum, if you're only looking at the two pieces, you have a preference for this way or that way, or you think, okay, no, I have to be at the fulcrum here, the witness. But if you relax and you include and you go, okay, all of that's there. And to me that's an important word, and that gives more possibility, because there might be other levels and other possibilities that I don't know about. And how can I be possible if I haven't given it space? If I haven't made, in a sense, the invitation to myself that maybe there's something I don't know, maybe there's something that I can't see about myself, about the other person, about the world in which I live. And to me, that's a very creative, exciting edge. That's where this sort of alive stillness is. It's like it's not a quiet, blank place. It's alive and interesting in the sense of like, oh, I wonder what else there is. Maybe there's other parts of me I'll discover. Maybe there's other parts of this other person. Maybe there's other parts of how we can all live together, how we function as a human species. Because it seems like we're in a pretty crazy world right now in terms of our situation, our population, the climate, the environment, the economics, many different things that seem to be in quite a lot of chaos and change right now. So do we have another potential in humanity? And, you know, I'm sure you've come across this in your other interviews, and I'm sure many of you watching this who've, you know, read other things or witnessed other things yourself. maybe there's something we're not seeing. And for me, that's an exciting edge, and that's where the word "and" comes in. So if I think I've come to this experience and I think that's it, to me that's a limitation. I don't know if that's the end. Maybe it is. Maybe there's something else. But if I'm not got the door open, I'm not going to see.
Right. I'm getting it. That's cool. That the wider focus, or like a wider allowing of life, is actually the fount of creativity, because creativity can be anywhere. And if we just say, well, it's on the fulcrum, and I'm the witness. In fact, the first thing I notice about that is I have a memory that I was a witness once, or I was how it felt when I did. And by the way, I'm not there now. And so then right away you're into time and saying, tomorrow I'll maybe get on the fulcrum. And but without that necessity, then there's just an openness for creativity wherever it shows up.
Well, creativity has many faces. Just a technical point. When you realize that you're not the witness, you've just become the witness again.
Oh, you witnessed that you weren't the witness?
And to come back to your broader point, it is the inclusion. It's the inclusion of like, oops, I was unconscious again, and I'm back, and here I am. And in this way, then we keep growing in ourselves as a human being as we explore all the parts of us, the unconscious. The only way that our unconscious can become conscious is we need to look at it. And to look at it, we need to explore. We need to have the different life experiences that help show us where we're not seeing something.
We need to invite it in too, right? And at least not have a lot of eviction notices on parts of ourselves.
Well, if we say, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, it's like a pressure. Instead of like going, yeah, I don't think I like that. Oof, ouch, but it's a part of me. How can I understand more about that? And often the parts of ourselves we don't like are there partly because we might have a belief or attitude that creates that judgment that we don't like it. Or sometimes the behavior might have been developed as a protection at a time when we really needed it, when it actually might have served a real purpose.
Isn't it always a belief? And we believe in we don't want that.
I'd say just be a bit looser with it. I understand your question, but where it comes from in your mind, you can go round in a loop. And this is what can happen for some of you who have an intellectual orientation, is the mind thinks that it understands it, what a belief is and how to fix the belief, which is, yes, a belief. And when we have a direct experience of seeing ourselves, then it's no longer a belief. It's a direct experience of truth. And when we have a direct experience of truth, it's not a mind concept. It's not an understanding on a mental level. It's an experience of truth. And you feel something different with that. And often the same situation can be completely different, but nothing's changed. That's why in Zen they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Everything's the same, everything's changed, and everything's the same.
You're saying the experience, maybe you said not just the intellectual understanding, but an experience of this seeing or understanding it. You're actually very, you have a great facility to guide people in having that experience. And I don't know if that's like some kind of a blank slate or a reboot, something you just see before anything's added, maybe, as if that's a way to say it. And we said earlier that, the purpose of our life here, we don't have a purpose to just stay as a blank slate. So then what happens when you're facilitating with people and people have a very deep experience. And what do they do with that? Or what are the opportunities after you have that type of an experience? Or maybe it just changes you so much that opportunity seems to say that there's a choice, to go one way or the other or use it in some way, but really, I guess there's no using it. Just using you in that case, or what?
I think you're running off there with a few concepts.
Right.
Certainly from my experience in facilitating with people, how I would put it is, I can support people to have a direct experience. I can't give them an experience because that's not possible. But I have, through my own experience, had now more understanding from an internal experiential level of what's possible. So in my workshops and in my one-to-one sessions, I can support somebody to see themselves more clearly. And from that more experienced level, particularly in the Satori workshop and in my intuition workshops, where someone experiences for themselves a truth about themselves. No one's told them, no one's saying this is how you should be. They're experiencing it, they're getting it. It's like an aha inside. And then that stays. Now what the person does with it is up to them. If they decide to go home and pretend it didn't happen, well, maybe their life doesn't change so much. What I've witnessed over the years, and I feel really touched by, is often what happens is people go home and that new awareness, they integrate it into their lives and they start to use it as a tool to help them see more. And what often arises is another level of responsibility for seeing how they have been, and consequently now how can they be now. So it's like one layer of the unconscious behavior drops away, and now that they're more conscious of it, then they can make different choices and consequently have different reactions from other people, responses from other people. The world responds differently. So if you've been playing out a certain unconscious behavior and you see it and you go, I'm not going to do that again. And you say that not from a mind level, but from a deeply felt level of, I don't have to do that ever again. And you go back out into your life, and sometimes you might fall back and you go, oh shit, I did it again. But something is already deepened in you, so it doesn't have the same consequences, and you're able to clean it up. So an unconscious behavior has become conscious, and you start to be in your world differently. And it does change your world around you. Not in any esoteric way, it's very real. Like I said earlier, if I was here and angry with you, we would be having a different conversation. If I'm here and I'm connecting with you, we have a whole different level of conversation. If I'm unaware that I'm acting out an angry behavior, then I'm going to keep creating these situations where people get either angry back at me or reject me. But if I've realized that and I'm going to start fresh again, even with people that you may have known all your life, friends and family, start again. And you might need to say to them, I've had an experience, something's changed in me. I'd like to start our relationship fresh again. Because it can help them to realize that you've had a shift. It can help them to see you. It comes back to what we were saying earlier. If we let ourselves be seen and we see the other person, a lot can happen. A lot can shift around as we have more direct experience of seeing ourselves, seeing our behavior, seeing what else is there. And in that way, directly experiencing truth. And it just keeps deepening, and there's layers and layers of it. And then there is more freedom, there's more peace. And I don't mean that in a quiet way where it's like, oh, more peace. It's much more alive and fun. Because because then we're more able to meet. And then that's when the natural creativity, then there's this different spark of life that's possible. And to me, that's what's really interesting. That's one of the motivations that has me, doing the workshops and the work that I do, because there's a deep passion of how would this world be if we all lived like that? If we all allowed ourselves to be seen and to see, how would it be? And that feels really exciting. So that's what my passion and my personal excitement is. And I do think it's possible.
We touched on a little bit about the changes in the world, and so many changes seem to be going faster and faster. And that so many seem to be critical in some way. And then looking out at humanity, there's so many different reactions, and the great one is the numbness of it, not or denial of it. And then, of course, there's some that are totally in anxiety and finding who done it, conspiracy theories and how it's hopeless and how we should prepare for a disaster. And then some are actually kind of philosophical and can take a fresh look at how society could work, because I think we ought to hold that in our, in our mind, like what would be an alternative. Ways of caring for each other, ways of delivering goods and services, and ways of owning and not owning, which would beg stewardship of resources instead of extraction of resources. I like that one. Some of the people I talk to just feel like the only transformation is always a collapse, and they're just saying, bring on the collapse. I want to be in the free flow. And to me, that just doesn't sound pretty at all, That sounds like, there's, and you can deny that it's real and all that, but somehow it seems like a lot of people are going to feel suffering, and even, we even talked that some people aren't going to make it, We even said things like that. And then the last group I'll say is I do talk with some people that are very silent, and their words just come out of a lot of silence, and they're almost kind of like dismissing any kind of like activity or kind of like any kind of thoughts that would say, hey, we can rebuild some of the institutions, and they're just more or less, what I get from them is just holding this open space or staying in this space, or somehow this is the maximum contribution. And I guess each of us get what we can get. Just like in communication, we get what we can get based on what our experiences have been throughout life and what we can relate to. And I don't know. Maybe it's just right for each of us to do what he thinks is right. And
I will take it up a little bit deeper than that, because I think it's not so much about doing what we think is right, because I think that's what got us into trouble in the first place. Particularly in our Western environment, there has been a lot that's come from thinking. And if you were to ask some of the leaders, some who have perhaps co-created situations that are causing unpleasantness at the moment, they might have thought that was the right thing to do from a thinking and logical perspective. But if we're really operating from the heart and we're allowing that more natural creativity to arise in each moment with each other, with our situations, with our money, with our involvement in the world, then my experience, and also what I see as being wider in a possible world, is it can be different. And as you mentioned, there is a lot of change happening on the planet on multiple levels. And one part of my work, which I do in Nepal and in Asia, is I work in disaster management. I'm actually teaching in terms of resilient communities on a very pragmatic and practical level, in terms of how can communities be more prepared for when a physical disaster occurs. And it's not just on a physical level that we can be prepared, it's also on a deeper human level. How can we be with ourselves and with each other, whatever the situation? If it's a physical disaster, if it's a flood, if it's an earthquake, are we here with ourselves, with each other? Are we responding with what is true in that moment? And that unleashes our deeper intuitive spiritual knowledge, which can drive our actions in a level of integrity that's way beyond the mind. And it doesn't need an actual disaster for that to happen. It's in each moment. When you're about to open a bank account, or you're about to go and join a protest, are you doing it just because I want to fight, I want to, say how bad those conspiracies are? Or have you looked for yourself? Are you feeling, is this appropriate? Maybe it is. Maybe we need to bring awareness to some things that are out of balance. But maybe there's a different constructive part that wants to emerge from you. Maybe you've got a certain skill or talent that can construct in a healthy way. So I feel very blessed that I'm in touch with a number of different interesting people in the world, and many of them are following their heart in that way. So what comes to mind is one young man who's following his heart in terms of inventions and renewable technology and making it from simple rubbish and making YouTube videos so that people can be self-reliant. There are people who are investing in and building sustainable, ethical banks that can really use our money and our economy in a healthy way. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions now, who are following their heart and looking at what can they contribute, what can they give into this kind of crazy, almost hopeless situation. But they're not looking at it from, oh, it's hopeless, it's too hard. No, they're going like, what's possible? I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try. And it's listening to that inner voice, that quieter voice, that might drive you into an action that can both change your life and might change others. A lot of the significant sort of inventions and changes that have happened in our world have happened from that more deeper intuitive place, not from a concept and not from thinking. And as we experience more chaos, and my guess is it's probably going to get a lot worse, I don't see that as negative, because often when we're in a crisis, it gives us an opportunity to wake up to who we really are. And if more of us wake up to who we really are, how we are in the world, how we're dealing with the population crisis, the food crisis, our political crisis, our economic crisis, there are solutions. How are we going to get in touch with that? How can we become and experience a different level of harmony? And that's up to each one of us. There's no saviour who's going to come and do it for us. It's a responsibility for each one of us in each moment. That's how I see it.
I totally admire you and admire, what you're doing and what you've just said. And maybe it's because of I have a belief structure that simply said, maybe I would say God works through hands and feet, right? And somehow things can be restructured. And but yet some people I talk to just say, well, that's like chasing the garbage truck and trying to fix the garbage. That our society is wrecked, and they've given up. I don't know if they've given up or they kind of position themselves that they see from a more of a vantage point, And then I don't know, even if they do, and those that see with them, let them stand on that lofty vantage point and create the space for the world to be as beautiful as it potentially could be. But I don't see that that's a good coaching, because then a lot of people that don't understand it will just retract from any kind of action and just kind of be resigned to watching it crash. And I think a lot of people misunderstand spirituality that way, and instead of giving their attention to something, they deprive something of their attention, and of course then it just festers. And I don't know, I see that as just as culpable as somebody that's making it fester, somebody that deprives their attention.
Well, everyone needs to look for themselves. And the way that I see it, if you're contracted, if you're in a smaller space and you're saying it's hopeless, then that's not a state of freedom. my experience and what I've witnessed and talking with people who are living in a free state, there is a natural giving. And listen to talks of the Dalai Lama, other people who are really making a contribution to the world. And they're not saying that this or that is going to happen, but they're saying, let's see what's possible. Because on one level, maybe the world isn't meant to be fixed. We don't know that. But if I've got a response in me, if I've got something in me that's rising up, that's bubbling up, that says, let's try this, let's explore this, then that's my responsibility. And that's the same for everyone who's listening, anyone who's out in the world. If you're saying it's hopeless and there's a contraction, then maybe there's something to look at. If you're allowing yourself to follow what your heart is driving, what this deeper intuitive sense, then to me that's much more spiritual. That to me is where the freedom is, that's where the openness is, that's where the inclusion is. Because we are all one. We are not separate. So even if there are those that are feeling that it's hopeless, they're a part of us too. And my observation and my experience of people who are feeling it's hopeless is often they're in pain. And they really do feel that nothing is hopeless. Nothing is possible. They're feeling so hopeless. And so by many of us who can feel this bubbling, this energy of something else coming, who are active in the world, who are just allowing, we're giving those people who are locked in the helplessness examples. Because maybe if they see you doing something, it gives them an inspiration.
I just like that notion that it just came up when you said those things, that maybe the world is not meant to be fixed, but then we're each doing our thing, and so maybe I'm meant to try to fix it until that very last moment and stand right there as the tidal wave rolls in and just try to build an ark or whatever I'm doing, and or tell about the ark, and so then that's okay. Like it's not wrong to try to fix something, even if it's not meant to be fixed, or if transformation comes in another way.
We don't know, Richard. We don't know what's really meant to happen on an ultimate level. All we can do is respond from within. That's the only part that we have any control, response, reality with, is within ourselves. We can be inspired by other people, we can be inspired by what's happening. But we've only got our own vehicle as the reference point, that's all there is. And then what actually happens, well, we'll have to wait and see. The adventure's still happening, we're still here. If you're watching this, you're still here. Let's see. To me, that's also the adventure. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm learning, I'm growing every single day. Something is evolving in me. I'm having different experiences. I'm meeting different people. I'm having different interactions. I'm exploring possibilities. So in that way, I know I'm growing. And let's see.
Yeah, well, we're not doing things just for an end, to fix the world. We're doing things because as we do them, and I'm sure what you're doing, there's so much good being done, and people are benefiting and moving out of suffering and moving into joy and love and comradeship and community. And so many stories around the world have touched so many people. It brings to mind microfinance and Muhammad Yunus and Grameen Bank, and all these kind of stories have done so much good, and different kind of school building in Central Asia, and so many kinds of things have, moment by moment, day by day, make people feel good. And so then how could you resist that, really? Congratulations.
Well, I think your key there is, that you feel good. I mean, I don't know, I don't think I can change the world. I'm not sure that it needs to, or that's really the intent. But if I'm living what feels right for me, yes, I'm experiencing that there's an overflow. When I'm giving or doing what I'm doing, it's having a two-way effect. I'm receiving amazing experiences. And it's touching my heart. It's opening me. I'm feeling good. And that is an encouragement. And so there's a spiraling that goes outward from that. And that's been my experience in life. And it's touching more people. It's involving more people. When I leave from this interview, I'm meeting other people this afternoon who are involved in giving back themselves through meeting me. They've got involved in doing things in their own communities. Some of it here, some of it in other countries. And that's what happens if we encourage each other. We share our stories. You know, we be together. And then there is something. So you mentioned about Muhammad Yunus, and there are many deeply inspiring stories. If you get on the web and you look at all these stories, I've got loads on my website because I love listening and hearing these stories because they touch me, and I'm reminded that I'm not the only one. And it does make a difference. Every single one of us makes a difference.
I truly thank you, Kira, for such an inspiring conversation on all levels, really. I just feel what we've said, feel us, feel you, feel this place. So many ways.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Kira K.
Thank you.
So thanks for watching. Thanks for following us in Australia. And I don't know, I can say I wish you were here, and I know you are, actually, for these few moments, for these few hours. And what a joy to cut loose and just see what could happen. And, you know, it could be a big thing where we're moving around for months, or it could be a little thing that for 5 minutes we just let go of a grudge, or somehow change our outlook on, or let something soften. So stay with us. More to come. Everything is great and grand down under.